Yo, we are live. Let me make sure that all of these things are working and accurate. Bear with me. I'm on this new software trying to get everything right so I can go live more often, a little bit easier. But happy new year to everybody. The first topic of discussion is going to be Mr. Donald Trump himself. This is Where Do We Go? 2020, things we need to leave behind in 2025. Because essentially, we find ourselves in a situation where, unfortunately, people are basically spinning their own wheels on how to address a lot of the issues and a lot of the things we still find ourselves doing. And, it is really redundant at this point. And I personally am a little bit slightly frustrated by all of it, just based on the strength that we should know these plays by now. We should understand these playbooks because it's continuously being the same thing as over and over and over again. But like I said, I got my man Quan up here with me today, and we're gonna be talking about that. And the first thing we're gonna be talking about is the populist spectacle, man, the elite maneuvering. And I'm gonna bring it in some examples today about what I mean by this because a lot of people don't necessarily they be like, what you talking about? What you talking about? Right? Because Donald Trump governs and campaigns in this very smash mouth way, right? You
Mhm.
have the dominance displays, the narratives, and that's one of the things that he's really good at. And you hear me all of the time talk about the fact that Donald Trump is really good at taking or using rather all of the noise in the room to his advantage by either amplifying the nonsense, the tomfoolery, and the debauchery, or adding in his own sauce in a lot of different ways. And so you got that. And then the thing that I wanted to juxtapose that to and why we find ourselves in this position is that we continue to, and this is leadership that I'm talking about as it relates to this. We have people who want to continue writing these dissertations. They want to continue to use finesse politics, not being direct or trying to figure out how to move around this specific way, this specific talking point, or this specific issue or matter without actually addressing the issue. So you got the norms, the decorum, and all of this other stuff that Trump don't necessarily or really care about, which is um unfortunate, but is the reality of the situation. Quan, go
Yo, yo.
ahead, bring in, let me know what you think about how you see, but
Zip it back.
I wanted to bring in this because as we know, Donald Trump also recently pulled in and bombed well, not bombed Venezuela, but he took over. And right now is under the impression that I am under the impression that we are running Venezuela based on the words of Donald Trump.
What?
And everybody's up in arms right now. And the conversation is, we find ourselves continuously in American imperialism. And it's one of it feeds back into the same conversation of having the continuation of like all of these things are a continuation of one particular thing. But let me bring this up real quick before I let you go ahead, because as we both know, we got Bernie Sanders up here, right? And it says Donald Trump has once again shown his contempt for the Constitution and rule of law. The President of the United States does not have the right to unilaterally take this country to war, even against a corrupt and brutal dictator like Maduro. The United States does not have the right, as Trump stated this morning, to run Venezuela. Congress must immediately pass a war powers resolution to end this illegal military operation and reassert its constitutional responsibilities. Trump's attacks on Venezuela will make the United States and the world less safe. This brazen violation of international law gives a green light to any nation on earth that may wish to attack another country to seize their resources or change their governments. This is horrific logic of force that Putin used to justify his brutal attack on Ukraine, blah, 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 blah. Trump and his administration have often said they want to revive the Monroe Doctrine, claiming the United States has the right to dominate the affairs of the hemisphere, blah, blah, blah. They have spoken openly about controlling Venezuela's oil reserves, blah, blah, blah. The world's in the largest. This is rank imperialism, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it's just more of the same because I'm sitting here like, but this is what we've been since like the 60s, right? This is who we are. And to write this whole dissertation, because that's what people are doing,
Mhm.
doesn't move the needle on American imperialism. Because if it did, we would not be here. But let me know what you think. Am I tripping or what?
Nah, you absolutely, this is the America we know and love. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, let's really get into the history of what we do in other countries. Like, unless we gonna explore it all, I don't want to hear nothing. Let's talk about what we did to Argentina and their president in the 70s, or was that I think it was 60s, 70s. How many countries whose origin stories start with us destabilizing them? Like, what are we really talking about here? And it's like, for me, all of this is hollow, all of this is empty. And that's what I look at when I look at politics in 2025. It was a lot of people that were just making very hollow grandstands that didn't amount to anything because nobody was brave enough to meet the moment. Case in point, Cory Booker, Mr. I'ma stand up there for how many hours did he stand up there to filibuster? Nothing.
A little, some over 24.
But
It was a very long time.
where was that for the big beautiful bill? How many hours did he stand for that?
I mean, I think the issue is in terms of people doing and creating acts like that around, the whole morality thing and all of these different components that they want to touch on. For me personally, is not that they actually do that. It's the fact that they lack the consistency. So I don't have a problem with people critiquing right now American imperialism. I don't have a problem with people critiquing Donald Trump. I think that is necessary and I think that it's appropriate given the circumstances. But I think what happens for me, what I don't necessarily like, is that we find ourselves in this situation where people like to cherry pick who they want to call out
Mm-hmm.
because nobody wanted to call out at the time, even when it was on the Republican side, George Bush for, the weapons of mass destruction, which I don't think we've ever found. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. We still don't have weapons of mass destruction. And we've been assassinating leaders, for lack of a better term, for a long time now because we killed Saddam,
Mm-hmm.
or let me say, because we on these interwebs where we'll get into this later, we can't really have conversations and use the appropriate
We
terminology.
unalived.
Yeah, we unalived Saddam Hussein, we unalived Gaddafi, and there's a whole system around global labor arbitrage where we destabilize nations, pillage their resources, and then have those same people flee to America as on whether it be refugee status or just because you have people who are in underdeveloped nations as a result of American foreign policy. And so this isn't something that's new. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is something of the age. I am only 35 and this has been going on far far before I was born. And so when people have these conversations and there's such this outrage right now around Donald Trump, it's just like, can we please be consistent? Because the reason that he is the Teflon Don and why I'm talking about, we need to move away from this strategy or this way that we approach Donald Trump's administration in terms of just being completely outraged every single time, all of the time, without any real efforts being done by our leadership. Because I'm not talking about the people who are average everyday people right now. I'm talking about people who have access. I'm talking about people who have power. And I'm talking about people who have the capacity to do something in the moment right now in which they're moving.
Mhm.
Because Congress, for what it's worth, has abdicated a lot of their responsibility and a lot of their checks and balances when it comes to this, because they everything has come down to performance. Like you said with the Cory Booker, this whole Bernie Sanders post and all of his posts, you've heard me on a number of occasions talk about the fact that I agree with him on a lot of different points when it comes to certain policies, but Bernie Sanders needs to be quiet, because you did not even say anything when Donna Brazile, when the DNC cheated against you. You don't even hold your own accountable. And everybody on the left and everybody who was willing to acquiesce to the Biden administration, to the Obama administration, and even to the Clinton empire, you all will not say nothing when it's on the other side. And so what that does is it allows for Donald Trump, as wrong as he is, to circumvent accountability, because the game has become the very swamp that he created. And what I mean by that is, like, everybody did this whole thing where it's like, oh, he gonna drain the swamp, he gonna drain the swamp. He created the swamp. Why would he drain something that he put and invested in? Why do you think that this man who has created these ecosystems and benefited off of these environments that is built around pure corruption, pure playing the quote unquote game that everybody is still hell bent on playing, why do you think that this man here is going to do anything to diminish that? And for all of you all who say that y'all gonna keep playing the game, why do you think you aren't empowering him and emboldening him as a result of you playing the game? Because when you lose, you also give leverage and power,
That's what I'm saying.
because a lot of these legal battles and all of this stuff just come down to fundraising and people trying to raise money.
And to piggyback off that, it's like, for me, I get tired of, oh, we got to push back on Donald Trump when y'all are the same party that won't even push back on Israel. Y'all can't even agree on what y'all stance is on that. You got the same people who can't push back on the, that aspect of their own party trying to critique a Donald Trump who has mostly galvanized his party. I could argue that the majority of what Kamala Harris really, like, kind of, her campaign got derailed on was her stance on Israel.
Hmm.
And that wasn't largely hers. It was the DNC's inability to have a backbone. Everybody was just saying anything to appease the middle of the road voters. And it's like, once you start doing that, you have no ground to push back on anybody, because at the end of the day, they know who their donors are. So you won't even go against your own donors, but yet you want to write paragraphs about who's morally not doing with this. Like, no. And that's like a larger thing for me. Stop preaching this morality stuff.
I mean, I don't think anything is wrong with preaching morality. I think you just got to be consistent in how you go about making your arguments, because it's not so much as the morality is the issue, because we do need more morality, because the problem is that we don't have morality.
I would disagree. We need more integrity.
But
Morality,
don't those
huh?
two go hand in hand?
I don't believe so. You could be someone who's morally upright and
Hmm.
not have any integrity. I would agree that's what we have more so than now. Most
You
people are
gotta help me
moral.
understand. You gotta help me understand now.
Most people are moral,
Hmm.
but integrity is what you're willing to do outside of people looking at you. A lot of people don't have the integrity. They just have the morality. It's easy to be moral. It's hard having integrity. Integrity is consistent. I could be moral in my thoughts and what I believe to be true and have zero integrity. Because when it's tested, when my morality is tested, that's when integrity kicks in. And I don't think the DNC for all of my life has ever been a party that has had integrity. Because whenever you push on their beliefs, they fall back into all of these tactics. They don't have any integrity. Look at how they deal with us as a people. Look at how they deal
So
with us.
so
Morally, they'll have a moral conversation with us on just that aspect. But when it comes down to them having the integrity to actually go and be about coalitioning and be about a lot of the things that they're trying to pontificate on people, they don't have the integrity to follow through on anything. They just want to give us morality.
but that's not what morality is, though. What you're talking about is performance of quote unquote said morals. They profess morals, but they don't have them. And what I mean by
That's
that
what I'm
is,
telling you. They don't have integrity.
but that's the morals go hand in hand with the integrity. And what I mean by that is, if a person is professing that they believe in a certain set of values, then your actions must follow that because that is what breeds and makes it to have and be integral. If that's even a word, I don't even know what it just came up like that. But
Integral is kind of, yeah,
yes,
it's the root.
but that is how you have integrity. The morals, because again, morals, one can argue, are subjective, right?
And that's
But
what I'm
we're
saying. They
gonna
have that.
nah, they don't. They don't. They
Well,
don't. And that's the
let me
thing.
not say they have it. They profess it. What I'm saying is
Exactly.
that they profess it, but they don't have the integrity to stand on any of what they profess as their morals.
And I agree with that because that goes to one of my points that the media outrage sustains Donald Trump's relevance, but they don't convert it into power because of that point. So, like, even when it comes to, the trials and people trying to get Donald Trump locked up and all of this, fanfare around him and everything he says, a
Hmm.
lot of the things that he even says, for example, I would say he probably has quote unquote more morals than most people would think, but he doesn't have any integrity because he's willing to double down on certain factions of America. And what I mean by that is there are things that Donald Trump says when it comes to racism, right? And I
Hmm.
do believe Donald Trump to be a racist. But do I think he believes everything that he says out his mouth as far as what one would consider a staunch racist? I don't. I
Yeah.
think that he understands that his base, I think that he understands that the American ethos loves that type of rhetoric and loves that type of posturing. And he's willing to feed into it to get to the outcomes that he wants. And that's what I mean by the difference between morality and the integrity piece, but also just him understanding how to weaponize media, weaponize fanfare, weaponize all of the media outrage and use it into itself, which is why I'm saying as we go into 2020, we got to cut that out because it's playing right into his hands. Because
Yeah.
the Republicans is for whatever people want to say, they're going to tolerate Donald Trump because he delivers turnout. They're going to tolerate Donald Trump because he knows how to whip people into a frenzy. And I know that people are going to say, oh, well, there are multiple factions right now going on. MAGA is at rift. You got the people who voted for Donald Trump who's realizing that it was all a farce. But what I would say and what I will argue against is that Americans, especially WASP in America, have
Hmm.
a very, very, very curious, interesting way of doubling down on things that are blatantly false and even against their own interests, if it means going against what it is that will benefit the Negro, right?
Hmm.
And so I think people underestimate that because I think that people are like, even when they talk about the midterms and when they talk about all of this stuff that's rolling out, is like, look, don't sleep on how much not only is America at its core super individualistic, it is also in this very weird, perverse way, fatalistic. Like people right now are willing to just let it burn because they feel like they'll have the opportunity to win in a terrain that is of debris and ashes rather than trying to compete in something that's already built. So you have people who are actively trying to accelerate us to the end game.
Yeah.
But give me your final thoughts on, Donald Trump, us, the fanfare, and how people have moved around him in 2025. And do you think we should keep our foot on the gas and keep our foot on what people would say is his neck in 2026? Or do we just need to kind of accept what comes out, but also just move in a way and make note without actually going through all of the social media rigmarole and the MSNBC running 50 million different chains and Washington Post running a million articles around every single thing that he says?
Yeah, I think that we need to have more of a focus on the policy. Like antics aside, we just need to focus on what's being passed. Like, I get it, the Venezuela stuff is what it is, but I'm looking at what Donald Trump is doing to childcare. And that to me is what the focus should be on for people like me and you. You know, the rolling back of the Department of Education, what he's doing to the borrowers. Those are the things that we need to make sure that we stay abreast of, ahead of, because we get caught up in like the spectacles of what he's doing, but it's the really small things that he's rolling back that we not really paying close attention to. It's the slight things. Like I know in DC, we had like 6 officials just up and determined they gonna go. Like we don't have a police chief, the mayor's leaving. We got so many open seats that, and my fear is that we don't have a community that has shown the stamina to be able to turn out and put people in those seats that's going to really care about our citizens. Those are the type of things that I have a focus on, because I'm not going to say I don't control what Trump does, but I have more of a vested interest in what's going on outside of my doorstep than I do his foreign policy and the grandstanding and who he's cursing out or who he's trying to bully or whatever, because a lot of that stuff is show. But there are very serious things that are going on in a lot of our communities that we need to be hyper vigilant of. I'm talking about hyper vigilant. There are a lot of seats that's going to be coming up in a lot of different states, and we need to find a way to make that the focus and not so much the antics of what the president is doing and this, that, and the third.
All right. I can touche to that. Um, the next thing that I wanted to talk about, if you are with us, please share the video. Please like it. I appreciate it. We just got done talking about Donald Trump. Next, I wanted to talk about what we are going to leave another in the past, or what we need to leave in 2025, is the art of the grift. Grifting has become such a huge thing right now. And, most people, most political actors, they're not ideologues. They are identity brokers, right? And what I mean by that, because what I wanted to touch on is that you have all of these people, from people who are on podcasts, from people who are in politics, from artists, entertainers, and so many different factions, who literally are making a living off of selling people basically this falsehood of what one would consider success or access, and all of these different ideologies that may lead to it. And the first one that I wanted to touch on was the Christian grift, right? And this is not an attack on Christianity. I have nothing against Christians. I have nothing against uh, anybody's religion for that matter. But what I wanted to talk about is the people who are trafficking in Christianity or any religion to basically sell people products. So you have the example that I wanted to use today was a person like Charlie Kirk, right? You'll
Uh-huh.
have a man like Charlie Kirk who basically his whole shtick was Christianity, uplift, and all of these different things that feed into a particular ethos when your body of work doesn't even necessarily match it. And we could extrapolate that onto the whole Republican Party as a whole for real, right now, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the overall grift. Another recent example was the grift that we seen with Nicki Minaj. A lot of people are upset with Nicki Minaj, but what I think we have to understand and put into perspective is that when Donald Trump came into office and when these economic shifts have taken place, a lot of people are panicking. A lot of people don't necessarily have the money, the access, and the resources that we think. And so we're seeing this mass migration into people trafficking in basically pure nonsense, pure foolery, and just falsehoods and lies as it pertains to how they're going to make their money. And I think we need to, as a people, as an overall society, get better at pointing out when people are actually grifting. Because if we are not able to do that, we get also caught up in how, what's good, man? Yes, you can share the live with the Discord. I appreciate that. I appreciate y'all for coming through. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank
so
y'all.
what basically happens with the grift is that you get people who are caught up in whether it be hustle culture, you get people who are caught up in all of these different tactics where people are trying to survive. Because I'm not here to attack anyone. I understand that everybody is trying to make a way, and that's what makes a way for the grifter, because the grifter is the person who is coming in and they understand that from their vantage point that there's this need, there's this yearning for something better or for something more, and they capitalize on that. Another, because the other grift is the self-help. That has always been one of the biggest grifts, right? But everybody who has done self-help probably knows that you get only up into a certain point until you hit this wall where you really understand that it's not all about me. It's not all about what I do. It's not all about my inputs, because there are other factors and other things that go into what allows one to quote unquote succeed. And I've talked about the myth of meritocracy, etc. But we got to get better. We got to get better as a nation in really seeing how people are grifting on our pain, how people are grifting on our ignorance, and just the overall gaps that have been created in the society, you know. And I want you to tell me what you think about the grifts that we've seen take place in 2025 and just leading up until now, and maybe even what are some additional grifts, because we know it's going to be more that come out that
Mm-hmm.
you think is going to be the next big thing.
I mean, listen, as soon as you touched down, I told you what the biggest grift was, and it's the gender wars. That is
Yeah.
the biggest grift in town. The biggest, most lucrative, like everybody and anybody is getting out there and just saying the most outlandish things about the opposite sex. That is the biggest grift, and it's the most damaging, in my opinion, which is why I don't even refer to it. I call it pimp and hoe culture. I do. That's what I label it as. It's pimp and hoe culture. As far as the Christian grift, that one's a little bit more difficult because it plays on a lot of the things that people use to survive and get by. So I can see why the average person is it's the easiest grift to get conned into, and it's the oldest. People have been, falling for the Christian grift for as long as America been America.
Yeah.
So that one is a little more. It's it's probably the most ingrained within America. To know America is to know Christianity. It's on everything we see. It's on the money. It's in the well, it was in the schools, but it's everywhere. So I can understand that. But
But I don't think it's been done in the way that it's being done now, no, in terms of people who aren't necessarily even, they don't have any values. Like none of the values line up to, or I'll say their behaviors don't line up with what it is they're actually professing. Cause it go back into the conversation we were talking about with the morality versus the actual integrity. Because you got people who are living double lives and multiple lives, but are willing to traffic in something that's dear to people to actually make money. And the problem is that even when we talk about, the intellectual grift, we got people who will come over into the political space or the political realm, have conversations, create messes, and not even understand or not even allow for themselves to be held accountable. And part of that, I always say that it's our fault as the general masses because we give people platforms. We create pathways for people to do this. Because even to your point about the gender war thing, as long as people continue to feed it, as long as people continue to consume it, people are going to continue to traffic in it and make money off of it. And again, for anybody who is watching, it's not to say that you are automatically lumped in as a grifter because you are participating in that industry. It's just that that industry has become a space where people, that's what they do. And
mhm.
it's unfortunate because you do have a few good people. You know me, I always appreciated Kevin Samuels. I appreciate it. I appreciate very few people in that space who I think have good intentions, who I think have conversations in a more nuanced way. But for the most part, I would agree with you that most people are, even if they're not grifting, I don't think that a lot of people realize that some of the things that we do or some of the things that we engage in can be weaponized against us even when we do have good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Because for what it's worth, I think some people do have good intentions, but I don't think they understand that the larger scope of society or the social political paradigms that exist within us talking to and engaging with each other on social media gets consumed by a completely different audience who markets to us and creates policy and creates environment that sits on the cusp of the conversations that we're having, right? And I don't think that people take that into consideration. And so it's like people have to ask themselves sometimes better questions. We got to
Yeah.
get to a point where we asking ourselves better questions as to, okay, I'm gonna do a particular thing, but just because I can do that particular thing, should I do that particular thing? And also and this is not for the grifters. The grifters are gonna grift. Like I'm
Mhm.
not having this is for the people who have good intentions. But the
Yeah.
grifters are the grifters. They go and try to make money off of whatever they can make money off of and slide on to the next thing because that's what's popular.
Yeah. And my thing is like a lot of this stuff is new terminology. Like nobody really understood what rage farming was, but that is a real thing when it
Yeah.
comes to rage baiting and clip farming and altering. Like it's a lot of things that people are doing just to create the most controversial or the most like clickable stuff, and it's like you bastardize a lot of what you're trying to do when you chase rage bait. And this is both for the people who make content and for the people who consume it. You got to know the difference between when you're being baited, when you're being rage baited, when these people are creating this content specifically for you to feel negatively. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I see a lot of. when we consume this stuff. Like you go on TikTok, you see people say ridiculous stuff all day, every day, and we just allow that in our spirit. We allow it in between our ears. And even the most smartest, most, upright person, if you just allowing all of these things to go in your head unchecked, and you
Yeah.
don't have an understanding of rage baiting and what these people are actually doing, even if the information is true, if it's not necessary and you just consuming it, then you're gonna fall for the grift. You'll find yourself falling for the grift. I see it all the time with perfectly normal people. I see people that are in marriages consuming like some of this gender war conversation. And it's like, what are you doing? You won. Why do you care? Why are you talking as if you're the people that need to be consuming this? But you'll find yourself in that loop because it'll be convincing enough, it'll be outrageous enough. You'll find yourself like, damn, let me see more. You know what I'm saying? And then the apps they're specifically made to capture attention. Like, I forgot what it's called. It's a documentary. I want to say it's called The Social Network or something like that. Not the
Yeah.
social experiment, where they actually break down like how each component of social media was specifically made to trigger certain things in your brain to keep you going. Like, not even on the most intellectual ways, it's so primal. Like when you see the updates in your phone, that triggers a certain response to your brain. When you see the constant scrolling up and the certain ways that the content come, like it's real interesting how a lot of these things just play on your human nature to the point where you reacting in ways that you know you wouldn't, but it's animalistic.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? When you hear that chime from your phone, intellectually you don't care, but in your animal nature, that chime forces you to react to.
And to piggyback on it and clear it up a little bit more, because I think when people hit animalistic nature, they don't quite understand it. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think what no, I get where you're going. And it's true, but it's a neurological disposition.
Mhm.
Your nervous system has a completely different framework than your mind, right? For example, it cannot tell the difference whether between you are dehydrated or hungry. You, as the person, your mind might tell you you hungry, or it's going to pick whatever one that you have been accustomed to. But a lot of these different things, whether it be the food industry, whether it be the tech spaces, whether it be any of these spaces, has a lot of psychological research and development that goes into it, because the products that people put together and the time that they take to put these products together for us to consume and purchase, they invest a lot. And so they need us to do it. And so a lot of it is built and will go down to the actual nervous system module in terms of hijacking that. You are nobody is above the influence in that way because we're all human. The only thing that helps with that is a level of awareness, which is why we are having this conversation, the things that we need to leave in 2025, because as you know, we're having it in a very informal way, but a lot of these different things um have to take place, because again, that even still keeping it all succinct piggybacks on the initial Trump conversation. That rage farming, all of that, the same capacity for him to just say anything and do anything and just speak out in all of these wild, crazy ways is him understanding the neurological disposition and how people respond to and react in certain ways. And so we have to be very, very careful about how we're engaging with content, how we're consuming content, what content we're consuming, and just being that much more aware, because there are a lot of people, they're going to be more grifters. They're going to be more grifters. They're going to be more Charlie Kirks. They're going to be more gender wars. That's not going anywhere, because again, for what it's worth, a lot of these conversations are birthed out of real issues, but the problem is that the grifters come in and they make messes and they hijack the whole thing. And now we're not even having conversations to actually solve the issues, but we're being incited to go down these rabbit holes that don't even solve anything because both sides, all sides are now yelling at each other. It goes back into, again, the other conversation about even the art of the I mean, not the art of the grift, but just like the Bernie Sanders types, the liberal types who continue to just perform because everybody knows that people love a great performance. And that's just human nature. We all love it. But you got to be aware of when somebody is just performing over and over and over and over and over again. We got to get out of the habit of wanting everything to be packaged to us in this entertaining way. We have to move away from that because us being entertained is killing us at this point. It's destroying us. Because if I got to package everything in an entertaining way, what people don't realize, to your point in having that conversation, and this is how the grifter seeps in and co-ops it, if everything has to be delivered in an entertaining way, to entertain, sometimes you have to take away the substance. You hear rappers talk about it, you hear artists talk about it, and you hear politicians talk about it. That's why everything is middled down to a 2-minute clip, a 3-minute clip, a 1-minute clip, because I am having to take certain levels of substance out of this discussion and this conversation and present it to you in a way where it is digestible. But the problem is that we have been so malnourished ideologically, mentally, cognitively, that people are not able to digest anything of substance. So now the people, even with substance, are having to jump in and try to fight against the grifters by
Mm-hmm.
making content that is less substantive. You have people who are highly intelligent who are having to jump in and maybe have a conversation about something that they don't even want to talk about because it's irrelevant, but because everybody else is talking about baddies and Cam Newton, which we're going to get into at the back end, I got to talk about Cam Newton and baddies and bring it into this conversation to let people know how it all intersects, because that has been the dominating piece of our people.
Yeah.
And so we have to get away from that. We have to leave that where it's at and understand that when we going on to the other side, we can't be saying, oh, you long-winded, or oh, here you go with this philosophical nonsense, or oh, I don't do this, or oh, I don't do that, because that's where we end up losing.
Yeah.
Because it is the grifter who takes advantage of that mindset. Because if you person, again, who thinks that way, all right, cool. I know I can just come in here and make, like you said, videos about man hating. I could just pick a side. Either I hate men or I hate women, and I'm gonna get a certain set of group who gonna like the content. You got the political grifters who everybody want to be conservative now. Everybody want to be either one side or something now, and they gonna grift how they grift with that. But both sides are bad. That's what I want people to take. Both sides are bad. When we're talking about grifters, both sides are bad. You have to find people who have a genuine knack or genuine interest in doing good in these conversations, because grifters on either side are poison. It's cosplay. They're putting on a costume to extract, whether it be your attention, your resources, or whatever from you. And we got to get better, and we got to leave that in the past. We got to leave that back in 2025. We got to get smarter. We got to get better, because guess who's the king grifter right now? Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's is a master grifter. That nigga has said things that in the past he was on the complete opposite side, and he just do whatever. He just do whatever. Wind blow. That's where we
But you
going.
but you know what? To put this in a bow, I remember there used to be a time where we used to complain so much that we didn't have control of media. The average person didn't have control of the media. We had to sit there and get whatever the media was giving us. And basically now everybody with a phone can in some way, shape, or form control media, and look at what we choose to do with that power. Look at what we choose to do. I would argue that some of the stuff that we do, we might as well have traded that in for BET that was giving us slop. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can remember so many years ago, we used to really have movements for us to take over media. And now we've essentially been given that. And these are the things that we choose to do with that power. Like, we literally are choosing to live out Boondock episodes with our power of media. Like, think about that. Go open your TikTok right now, and I guarantee you, you'll see somebody acting like Gangstalicious, Granddad, Riley, Huey. Like, literally, these are the things that we are choosing to do and have conversations about when we were finally given the power to have and create our own media. But yet we want more power.
I think the problem is we don't actually have choice. And I always talk about it because a lot of people don't move based on what it is they actually want to talk about or say. A lot of people need permission. Like, even if you take the whole Israel conversation or the Gaza conversation, a lot of people may have felt this way for a long time, but the only reason they're willing to say it now is because the consequences aren't as high as they used to be. And so there's still this hand of, you know, people not wanting to actually move in a certain way or trying to control. I wouldn't even say trying to control the narrative, but they do have the capacity to control the narrative, which is why you see a lot of money being put into even the podcast arena from old companies, or I would say the what do you call them? I say the classic media companies who are trying to get into the game of podcasting because they want to maintain that influence of not necessarily even dominating the voice, but just maintaining what's allowable and what's permissible in terms of the conversation that's being had. But, you know, that's the grift. It's a lot of grifts. We're going to have grifters. We're going to keep having them. Appreciate it. We are going to move on to political nuance. And this one is going to be a rather short one because I think it is more of a straight to the point type of situation because what we got to also leave in 2025, people, is not understanding that just because you have conservative ideologies and because you have conservative values on certain positions, that you are Republican. I want us to be able to begin to understand and acknowledge that parties are different from political ideologies and are different from values, right? So conservatism is a set of values that offers a ideological framework that holds it together. Just because you have conservative values don't mean you have to be in a Republican Party, because also understand that just because you're have liberal stances and positions on the other side of that, that you have to be a Democrat. That's not how it works. That's not how that goes. Most of us are a mixture of the two. And what we have to begin to acknowledge and accept is that you have to be very strategic in choosing what it means to be of a particular party. And the reason that I say that is because I am in DC, for example, right? And I'll just use myself for an example right here. In DC, it would be foolish to actually have some type of influence, some type of access, and then also try to be in the Republican Party, especially as a black male. It just wouldn't make sense because leaving the Democratic Party is not leaving either party is not zero sum. What I would say to anybody is that you need to be strategic in how you choose to go about what party you are in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. But don't let the party that you pick be based on the fact that you think because you have conservative values in, let's say, 5 positions, that you automatically have to be a Republican and vice versa. Just because you have some liberal stances don't mean you automatically have to be a Democrat. There is room for people to be in both parties. The goal is to change in 2026 how you engage with the party. Because the problem that we're facing is not the fact that we are here or there, it's how we're entering rooms. We're entering rooms in a kneeling posture. We're entering rooms and not having an agenda that is of the collective. That is what we're doing. That is why we're losing. It is not because we are in one or the other party. We have to stop arguing about, well, this party, that party, this party, that party. Neither party cares. What they
Yeah.
care about is the fact that you either have an agenda or don't have an agenda. Either you're here for your own individualistic endeavors or you're here for collective uplift. Because you can have a policy agenda or policy slate that has both conservative and liberal items within it in terms of how they interact and engage with the whole ecosystem. Because it's not one size fits all. That's not how it works. And so what I need us to do is understand those differences in 2025, because I'm actually tired of hearing the arguments about, oh, well, we need to lead a Democratic plantation. What? To go to the Republican plantation who also don't do nothing? And again, if you're in a state where the leverage, the funding, the access may lean towards that party, and you can move and shake in that way, please, by all means, if your circle permits that, please, by all means, do that. But we can't be isolating each other based on political parties, because either way, we're still of the same group. We're still in the same ecosystems ultimately, whether you want to acknowledge that as a fact or not. It is what it is. And what I will say before I let you go ahead, Quan, is that please, coalitions, reciprocity, do not go into any party, any room, if you are not getting something either for, look, and I mean, either for yourself or for the collective, because sometimes you can get things for yourself so that you can get to a certain spot to gain more access. But tell me I'm tripping.
Nah, you on point. And it's like, I want people to really see the consequences of playing the game. Like, I'm looking at this, you following that Ilya Omar massacre of what's going on in
Nah.
Minnesota?
Well, you talking about the
But
Somali fraud?
playing the game. Playing the game. She played the game at the highest level. And look at it all unraveling. That's why I said a lot of people, when you do these things politically, you don't give yourself you don't give yourself anything to stand on. You don't give yourself anything to stand on because this is what leveraging access, this is what, you know, one hand washing the other and all of those sort of backdoor type of politics. That's what that shit breeds. It
Yeah.
breeds you and gets you to the point where now Minnesota's in shambles. It's in shambles. Like we don't know what's gonna happen. And now that's led to a larger policy, and now the whole country has to suffer and not having child care funds
And that's
because
and that's the
one
go
person
ahead.
decided they wanted to play the game.
Yeah, but I think that's the part that people don't understand when it comes to playing the game or not playing the game. Your camera went off, or not playing the
My bad.
game, because what happens is that you gotta understand the consequences of said, and then also understand when somebody can take advantage of your slip up, even though people might say, for example, oh, it's BS, man. That happens all the time on both sides. Who are they to come in and critique? You know, it actually happened back in 2020, and that's when the original thing started. But what people have to understand, especially in politics, is I will take something and use it to my advantage, because it's the same thing with the Epstein files, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with the Epstein files in terms of both political parties are complicit in terms of the corruption and being involved with Jeffrey Epstein, but they're using it as a dodge. Nobody wants to actually talk about it. And the fact that it is being used, because again, this all goes back, your camera off, this all goes back to how it intersects. It's a grift on the sense that people have to understand that one, they weren't going to give it to us anyway. And three, or two, they're prolonging it to treat it as this form of entertainment value. It's not being even taken and delivered in a very serious way, because we engage with content in such a way as Americans generally, everything is dumbed down to reality TV style as stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's like when it's convenient, well, y'all need to release the Epstein files, release the Epstein files, da 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 da. Well, where were again, if you've been consistent, this ain't for you. If you've been consistent calling out everybody, this ain't for you. But for my people who will go through a whole Biden administration and literally not say anything about the Epstein files,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not trying to hear what you got to say. I'm really not trying to hear any complaints, because you waited a whole 4 years for this debauchery to get even worse and to get buried. Because what are we talking about? It's over with. Let the Epstein files die. And I know some people might disagree with me on that, but it's a fool's errand right now. They just using it so when something happened, they just going to drop a little piece here, drop a little piece there to redivert as to what's actually happening and going.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I just think that we really need to be cognizant of finding people, regardless of party, who care for community and who care for people. Because these people don't care about people, they care about systems, they care about donors. And that's really all these people do politics for at this point. Who's going to contribute to my campaign and what systems can I benefit from through said election? I have rarely seen, people are holding out hope for this Madami guy, but I seen it. I've seen that play before. I don't want to call it Obama point two, but Obama 2.0, but I've seen we're going to galvanize a bunch of people who are disillusioned, use that energy, get us in the office, and realize that budget wise, I can't do much. So I'll just be a lame duck mayor. I've seen that play over and over and over and over. And for some reason, it's the gold. It's
Yeah.
like the golden play. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to really believe in these people who make promises. But I was told a very long time ago that the game in politics has always been you overpromise and you underdeliver. That's always been what it is. You overpromise on things that you feel you can do, but then when you actually get in said office, you underdeliver. And I'm not even saying that that's on the politician. That's just the nature of what a lot of politics, a lot of politicians come into. And then your integrity gets tested. And a lot of people, when they get in them offices, they don't have the integrity to tell people the truth. They don't have the integrity to go against their donors. They don't have the integrity to walk away from said office when they're no longer able to do their jobs. Because that's what we got a lot of in DC as well. We got a lot of people who they want to die in office. And it's like, what is that serving?
Nothing. But the problem is that it's a lot of big truths. And when you start telling the truth under your watch, that's a whole different ball game right there.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like these are like these are the times, man. Like if you're a politician, you gotta really be on some give me liberty or give me death type shit at this point. Because that's how corrupt it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think anybody willing to do that because that's why I started off with the whole smash mouth finesse critique. Because essentially the way that they running, the play that they running right now is that. They like, all right, cool. It is out of control. We did do something illegal. What y'all gonna do? Like, are y'all gonna stop me? Are y'all going like, okay, cool, y'all gonna write something up? All right, whatever. I can't really be held accountable at this point in time. So, and again, I'm so plugged in to all of the other players, like what y'all gonna do and say, because y'all need the whole ecosystem. Like we all built this debauchery together. And that's where we at right now with it. And so that moves on. Again, political ideologies are different from parties, people. Literally, quite literally, you can have conservative values and still be in the Democratic Party. Parties, political parties, are vacuums to be filled. It is why Donald Trump was able to do what he did because they are to be filled. They are to be taken advantage of. They are to be dominated. You can pour whatever you want to into it. All you need is influence and access, right? And so that's what that is, and that's what that entails. Let's leave all of that. We this party, that party. We gotta leave this plantation, that plantation in 2025. Figure out what's the best move and the best strategy for your particular area, for your particular city, and move forward with that and still have your values. And wherever you are, work with your community and have y'all agenda and have y'all political slate. Because I promise you, it's going to be some liberal stuff, it's going to be some conservative stuff. Just because we have a multi dynamic system, it's not all socialism, it's not all capitalism. So I need people to be aware of that and stop being willfully obtuse and stop being overly binary when it comes to our thinking. We talked about again the liberal mafia a little bit at the top of the hour, but a lot of that was we had the conversation around performance and people not necessarily being forthright. But I wanted to jump into useful idiots, the useful idiots, man. So again, we got the baddie culture, the blind Trump hate, the hustle culture, and all of these different things to direct anger away from power and back onto the individual. Because this too is a grift, but it's a slick grift, right? It's that grift that's going to make you feel like you are the problem and not the ecosystem and not the structures that have put us in a situation to where we have to work 4 and 5 jobs just to meet at the middle of where we are. And we as a people, unfortunately, because America's ethos is, the young and the brave and being able to overcome and that level of resilience, which is a good thing, it has also been weaponized against us by those of people who do have power over the environment. The environment is the thing that is what is being changed and shifted. And the environment now facilitates and requires us to live in a certain way and is going to continue to move and continue to shift because we're in a transition period in America right now to where it's never going back to what y'all think it is. It's never going back. We're not going back there. Leave that idea, leave it in the past. We're done. It's cooked. It's over with. This right now is a new America, and we are here. We're not at the final destination, but we are here. We are on the bus, train, whatever mode of transportation you prefer. We are en route, I'll say, rather, because this useful idiots piece, the Nicki Minaj, and again, Donald Trump is a useful idiot. They're useful idiots. And this is in politics, we always say we prefer arrogance over ignorance because a person who's ignorant can be woken up in most cases way easier than a person who's arrogant, who believes they know everything, that cannot necessarily be poured into or enlightened in any type of way. And I say that and I mention that and I bring that because so many people think that continuing to do the same thing over and over is the best solution. Some people think that looking at a boat when it's about to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, and we looking at a boat with a hole in it, with a series of holes in it. We know the holes. We've dealt with the holes. Some of the holes we have actually put there. We're now going to say, you know what? We still going to rock out with that boat. Instead of saying to ourselves, let's build a new boat. So Quan, what I want from you in this part, because I don't know if you've seen the Natalie Nunn interview with Cam Newton,
I seen
uh,
clips of it.
and because I want to bring all of that into it because it goes back to the whole gender war thing you had brought up and just the overall capacity of people to be used to their own detriment, whether it be the MAGA voters who thought that Trump was going to deliver in one way and haven't gotten that, or whether it be the baddies and the feminists, especially the black feminists, who have been tricked and bamboozled and now find themselves on the opposite side of the aisle when it comes to their white woman counterparts as to how they're in relation to, again, the men, and I'm not going to say white men, let me say white elite men, right? Those who have permitted a lot of, in a lot of cases, to now say that, well, a white woman is more oppressed than a black man. But now, in this same time and era, people fought for and fought on the side of when y'all $300,000 jobs short, the person that you fought along with and the side with is not saying a peep. It's not saying nothing.
Yeah, it's like, and I was thinking of this the other day, man. I miss the days where, you know, God gave us all value. Because at the crux of a lot of these things, when you look at each one of the grifts, each one of the people that's engaging in being useful idiots, the major thing that's the point of contention is that everybody is walking around telling people that they don't have any value. And respectfully, who the fuck do people think they are? Who do you
What you
think
mean
you
people don't be?
are?
What you mean people be telling people they don't have value?
Go look at the content, bro. A lot of the people that are making these types of contents that are being the useful idiots, those people are going around telling people you don't have value unless you do this. You don't
Okay.
have value unless you engage in this. You don't have value unless you dress this way. You don't have value unless you have this aesthetic. You don't have value unless you go out here and do this to your body. You don't have value unless you sound like me. That is the crux of a lot of what this shit is people that have been empowered by other people telling everybody who has value and who doesn't. I guarantee you, if you were to take that venomous aspect out of a lot of these conversations, it wouldn't sting as much. But that's the biggest selling point, and why these people are where they are is because they're selling people on the fact that if you don't do these things, you don't have value. And there was always an aspect of that in our communities, but nobody would ever have the goal to go up to even the most lowliest person and tell them to their face that you don't have value. We grew up on respect. You respected the bum on the street all the way to the corporate dude that got, you know what I'm saying? But now we created a situation where you have average people who can get on a mic, who can get in front of a camera and tell other average people that they don't have value because they don't have this or because they don't have that. And it's like, that's all you open up any media and see. That's all you see nowadays. You don't have value if you don't have this aesthetic. You don't have the clean girl aesthetic. You don't have the this aesthetic. You don't have, this amount of women. You don't have value unless you're in a gym. Like, that's all you see. And that's the problem, is that we're ascribing value to any and everything except for what a person's character is or what the people stand for. That's
So
the biggest
basically,
thing.
substanceless.
Yes, because you got people that'll tell you if you don't talk to X amount of women or whatever the case may be, they just make up stuff to make people feel like they're not valuable. And to the impressionable people, they'll actually sit there and believe these things. And it's like, who died and made you God to be able to tell somebody they're not valuable if they don't have this amount of education, if they don't have this amount of money, they don't have this amount of status? That's never how we operated as a people. But unfortunately, this is what's captured us. To now we got black people who are telling other black people they don't have enough socioeconomic status to date. That is insane. But that's where we are. Like, what? I get
That's
it.
where
We're
we
not a
are.
monolith, but
But we
you
should be.
can't use that statement to say that because we're not a monolith, you don't have value. Because that's what people are doing now. They're saying that we're not a monolith, but if you don't agree with me, you don't have value. If you don't dress like me, you don't have value.
Yeah, the problem is that we aren't a monolith in experience, but we should be a monolith in the direction that we are going. And
Exactly.
that's what messed me up. But I'm gonna go ahead because we had a minute. I mean, I said a minute. We had an hour and 18. And so I'm gonna wrap up and give you a chance to have any last words. So I think based on the conversation that we've had here today, that we can agree that 2026 is going to belong to the people who understand incentives. So understand where the grifters coming in and coming out, and also being able to find yourself and put yourself in position. People who ignore aesthetics, the aesthetic culture, the politics, the performative stuff, the I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you what you want to hear, and people who actually do things silently without having to tell the whole room, you know? And so the future won't be decided by those who yell the loudest, but those who know the rules well enough to stop playing fair. because this is not about fairness. This is not about any of those things. And unfortunately, we are in a system, in an environment where it is full of debauchery. But any last words?
All I would say is going forward, train your algorithms, put some positivity in there. I got a lot of like daily quotes and positive things. Like the algorithms are bad, but they are controlled by what it is that you search. And you have to make sure that you, in 2026, find as much positivity and put that into your algorithm as much as you can. Because they're not serving you anything that'll be of substance. And if you just let these things run wild, that's all you'll have access to because these algorithms are now damn near corporations, you know.
The
So
almighty algorithm.
find ways to find positive content, positive people. They're out there. It's harder to get, but search up the things that you're interested in. Find like-minded individuals that'll keep you accountable and that will, you know, push you in positive directions.
That's all, folks.
That is all, folks.